Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a very interesting dialogue awaiting us. Is artificial intelligence replacing us? You know, this question has also become very boring now. So the question we ask today is, artificial or intelligent? With a lot of applause, which I'm sure you have exercised your hands and you'll continue to exercise them during the rest of the day, please help me invite Mr. Parvez Abbasi, Founder Adventures, Leadership Development Expert, as a panel speaker. He's a mentor, leaders, entrepreneur, digital strategist, and advocate of responsible human-centered innovation. Second seat, please. Next, we have Ms. Iza Farah, Senior Education Specialist, World Bank, a global education reformist shaping digital equity, foundational learning access, and national-scale policy change. Thank you, Ms. Iza Farah, for joining us. Please clap for her. I am sure you are now familiar with Mr. Yasir Khan from Tech Valley, Project Manager, Google for Education, a voice from the front lines of global technology integration, enabling students and teachers to leverage the world's most powerful learning tools. We invite Mr. Aslam Sharif, Chief Technology Officer, the Millennium Education, the architect of TME's digital evolution to come, driving infrastructure integration and future-ready learning technologies. And the most important, Mr. Mahmood, CEO Knowledge Platform, as our keynote thematic speaker and moderator for this panel. He's a pioneer of EdTech in Pakistan, a thought leader whose work has shaped digital learning ecosystems across hundreds of institutions. Thank you very much, esteemed panel. Over to you now, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you so much to my fellow panelists for joining us. I want to start with asking a question which has three parts. First part is, do you feel you're very ready to use AI as a teaching tool, as an education tool? Second part is, do you feel you're somewhat ready? And the third part is, do you feel you're not ready? So as I asked each one, just shout out yes if you're in that category. So do you feel you're very ready? Okay. Do you feel you're somewhat ready but not very ready? And do you feel you're not ready? So it sounds like somewhat ready might be the biggest category. Do you agree? Okay, that's good to know. There's a long way for us to cover. So if we can start with the slides, I'll talk for a little bit and then we'll have a panel discussion. I'll ask everybody a question and then we'll open it up to the audience. Do you know this guy, Isaac Asimov? He's a science fiction writer, but very interesting guy. And he said something which really has become for me the most important single statement about where we are heading. He said that in the pre-industrial age, we had specialized, personalized education for the few. So if you're usually the son of a lord, you could learn how to do archery, you could learn literature, you're the son of a king, you could learn about governance and so on. Then we went into the industrial age. In the industrial age, we had standardized education for the many. But we are moving now into the information age. And the promise of the information age is that you will have individual learning for everybody. So it's not easy because we all grew up getting an education in the industrial age, right? And we all as teachers also learned how to impart education in the industrial age model. But now we are at the divide between the industrial age and the information age. So there's a very big change that is taking place. So I view the many, many changes, 5 major ones. AI and technology. Second is new kinds of skills are coming up. Third is new teaching methods are coming up. Fourth is new ways of measuring education, and then the opportunity and need for continuous learning. So I'll just spend a little bit time on where we are heading, and then we'll open up panel to talk about different aspects of what's happening. So one challenge is we've got all our 20th century subjects, including math, science, English. But then we also have a whole bunch of new subjects, and they're not really subjects in the traditional sense. There's some domains which look more like subjects, but in between we've got skills. So one of the big moves that's taking place is that we are moving from subjects to skills. And as you can see, many of these skills are not really embedded in a curriculum. So you could have biotech or biology, economics, ecology, various kinds of subjects. You get degrees on them. You get certifications on them. But then there are these cross-cutting skills, like let's say problem solving. So problem solving, you don't get a degree on, but it's getting more important than what it is, the particular domain, because you can carry it across domains and you can carry it across institutions. So we are also going to go from degrees, from certifications to micro-credentials. That means if they're micro-credentials, you're getting recognized at very, very minor level. And that means it has to be transportable. You may be able to take it from one institution to another. That also means the institutions must be together. And now, of course, this is quite a complicated chart, but it's on problem solving. So it's one of those skills. So they're core skills, and there were core tools that you can use for problem solving. But now you also need to think about what AI will do, how AI will change problem solving skills. So we're living in a very, very interesting age. I showed AI as the first wave. AI is both a driver, it's pushing us forward, but it's also giving us tools to use to take that journey forward. So we are in a very exciting period, and I would very much like to get everybody's perspectives on this. I'll start with Iza. I'll ask you a little bit to talk about AI from an education institution's point of view. I would then like to ask Parvez to talk about AI from a teacher's point of view, what it means. I would like to ask you, sir, to talk about education from a student's perspective and all the one Yasser, all the lovely things that Google brings to the table. And then Aslam, I'd like to you to talk about AI from a technology point of view. What are the technologies that are needed, hardware, infrastructure, and so on, to bring this about. So we'll talk for about 4 or 5 minutes each. Let's keep it not longer than that, and then we'll open it up to discussion. Thank you. If you'd like to come up and talk from here, you're most welcome, or you can talk from the table.
Thank you very much for having me here. I hope you can see me. I'm not as tall as Mahboob Saab, but I hope my face is visible. So I think you've set the stage really well for what I'm going to say. If I look back and look at my career, having worked in various institutions in various countries, what got me through my career, it was obviously my knowledge, but more than that, it was my sense of resilience, my sense of problem solving, my grit, my empathy, my ability to work in teams. And when I look at my daughter, who's a child of the information age, COVID-19, iPads, AI, I worry for her as a child about whether she will actually be able to uh, um, adapt to change, to consequences of not having the kind of rigor or sense of hard work ethic or sense of actually achievement when she struggles to learn something and achieves that. And if I were to own a school, that would be my biggest concern for my students, right? Is AI going to limit our ability to problem solve, to grow up being critical thinkers, to develop grit, and to develop critical thinking ability? And as the owner of an institution, I think my responsibility then would be to make sure that AI doesn't replace these attributes that our students grow into as they graduate from primary to middle, middle to high. So that's one thing over there. The second is that, everybody in your school, even within a school, will have different levels of access to technology. Do they have internet at home? 2.2 billion families across the globe don't have access to internet. 2/3 of households don't have access to internet. And one-third don't. And the one-third that doesn't are those from the most underprivileged backgrounds. So as a school principal, as the owner of a school system, or even the government that leads public schools, how do I bridge that divide? How do I make sure that everybody in my school and everybody in the school system benefits from AI equally? Do they have access to internet? Do they have devices? And do they have AI literacy? I'm not going to speak about teachers because I know my colleague is going to speak about that. And the other big thing that comes into play is language of instruction. As educators, we all know that children learn in a language that is their first language at home. AI right now is not conversant in multilingual prompts. AI will not be able to respond to the prompt of a child who learns in Punjabi or Saraiki or Pashto. They will need to translate what's in their mind into English and then make those prompts. And that, again, is a big divider. And finally, what I'm going to say is ethical use, right? How will students start using AI to take shortcuts? Not learn what they need to learn, just ask AI for prompts. So what I'm going to summarize by saying, what does it mean for education institutions? Use AI as an innovator, but also use it as a tool for improving equity. Make sure that everybody in your school has equal access to AI, whether it is through computer labs that allow equal time among all students, or whether it is asking your teachers to be responsive to students when they feel that they don't have the same kind of access that other kids in their class may have. And then make sure that you continue to evaluate the use of AI, the impact it is having on your teachers, on your students, and on your institution as a whole, and course correct as required. I'm going to end over here and happy to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, before we go into AI and the benefits that teachers can draw from it, it's also, I think, important to go back and look at the role of education as a whole and question what is the purpose of education. In Pakistan, whether we like it or not, the purpose of education ultimately is to get a job. And therefore, the question is that, are we doing what the parents are paying us for? And are we delivering on the results? According to a State Bank report, 90% of fresh graduates are unemployable. And my fear is that with AI and the future, this is going to become even more challenging if we continue with our traditional education systems. If you look at the World Economic Forum, what they're talking about is that the jobs of 2030, the technology doesn't exist for the jobs of 2030. So how do you prepare a generation of people in 2025 for a technology that has not yet existed? And this is, I think, one of the important roles. Incidentally, the 4 other technologies that people need to learn about are not technologies. They are, according to the World Economic Forum, critical thinking, problem solving, interpersonal and communication skills, and I would like to add empathy to that. But I think we're on the verge of a unique opportunity. It's a double-edged sword, like many other things, that either we let the students lead us with AI, or we ask the teachers to take the lead and bring AI into the education system. And the long and short of it is that if we don't embark on AI and use this as a tool that will help us in our roles as teachers, as educators, we will ultimately not only fail, we will get left behind as well. We will get left behind globally, we will get left behind nationally, and also from our own institutional perspectives. So there are many, many uses of AI, and of course some of them are in terms of designing the courses, designing the curriculums, enhancing the latest technologies into the process of teaching young students. But also, if you look at how you can use that time that you will actually save, because ultimately any technology is there to serve you. And the technology that we have seen in the past, there have been many arguments about how it will affect education adversely. In reality, all the technologies that have come through have positively impacted, I believe, education. So for example, I remember in the 70s when calculators started to come into the school classrooms, teachers and parents were concerned that their children would not be able to use proper maths, for example, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, etc. And I think that, obviously we've come over that particular fear. If we look at AI as any other technology, we will see that it will be able to make our job easier and faster, and hopefully with more quality. So my point is that I would like to think that all of this AI technology that we use, and there are courses now available for teachers, and I would encourage all of the teachers to use those courses to learn how AI can help them become better teachers, better educators. The time that we will be able to save, perhaps we will be able to give to our students more empathy and more connections and more critical solving and more of the more human skills that they perhaps need. I believe that AI will obviously add significant value, and it will also benefit the teachers by becoming AI teaching assistants, for example. We've, of course, seen some research in this regard that typically in a classroom you have, let's say, 25 to 30 students and one teacher. That ratio, of course, compromises the quality of education that we can impart. But with AI, we can actually develop an AI teaching assistant for each and every one of our students. And I believe that that could be a critical factor in their growth, in their education. To sum it up, I would like to say that we can either decide to ignore it or we can decide to use it. Like all technologies, today I believe that most people here would be using a smartphone. But that wasn't necessarily always the case. Most people here are probably using WhatsApp, but that again was not necessarily the case 10 years ago. Many of us are using various other technology platforms, softwares, and apps that we were not using, and these have helped us improve the quality of our lives. And one last point is that we also have to make sure that the technology is being used in a positive sense. For example, social media had the original promise that it would bring people together, connect them from across the world. In reality, what it's done is it's distanced people within the same room and the same environment. So as a double-edged sword, I believe that it's the opportunity for the teachers and the educators to decide, but do not let it go, because whether you choose to use AI or not, the world will use AI, and really we don't have a choice. So use it for the benefit, and use all of these courses and tutorials that are available. They will enhance your learning and give you examples of how you can use AI in the education and in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to speak from my point of view, from the point of the students. So in my position and in my experience working with teachers, I've realized that generative AI or large language models has significantly impacted the way teachers will deliver instructions, but for students, they're not limited to teachers to provide them with the content. Now, as a student, if I were to go in a classroom, I am not limited by what notes you bring to the class or what structured learning you provide me, But as a student, I'm looking for you to facilitate the learning now. I have access to all of the knowledge of the world in a directed way. I can be very specific in my inquiry. I can learn what bioengineering is or what different chemical interactions are like, and I can prompt the AI, or rather the large language model, if I were to use the appropriate term, in terms of driving my learning. But as a teacher, you are the people who can provide me as a student the focus. And the focus can only come with knowing how to utilize technology. Now, having said that, I think at this time, it's a transformative time. We do think that technology as a tool drives adoption, but without continuous professional development, that adoption remains at a very low number. So as my colleague earlier mentioned, you need to learn. You need to learn a lot of new tools. And in a structured way, if you can provide children the focus in a classroom, what kind of projects you're taking them on. So students will know what they're learning in a class, but they need you to take them towards physical projects, group discussions, away from the computer and back to the computer. How you're driving the classroom interaction is key now. How you're facilitating the conversation with generative AI available to everyone is the focus now. So please continue to learn new tools. Please continue to learn how to adapt your teaching. And as a result, your students will benefit, and then they will be the drivers of future of the change that we are looking at. I will just close this, and thank you so much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Faisal Saab and the whole team for organizing this. And some of you may know that I've recently joined, so this is my 7th week. I was part of the Beyond program, right here, this one, and I met some of you. How many of you here from Beyond? Wow, okay, not that many, but we were around about 100 teachers. So let me just start out with saying that at Roots Millennium, we are encompassing AI. We are using Google Classroom, Gemini, which is AI-driven. And let me just point out to a school in Barrier Town, Karachi. They have already had 50 students buy Chromebooks. So a huge round of applause for Binish and Ma'am Binish. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I hope that other future schools will also embrace this and start getting their teachers to, their students and parents to buy Chromebooks and invest in that. Because if we do not invest in AI or invest in tools, we won't be able to do AI. Is that clear? We need to have our students purchase tools for using AI in the classroom. And not enough with that, we also need to have much better internet. I know that you guys want that, so we are working very hard at that, yes. Internet needs to be there. So to drive AI across education, we need infrastructure. We are working on the infrastructure part, but you also need to embrace the AI. How many have used AI for the last 48 hours? How many used AI in the last 48 hours? Yeah, not that so many. We need to live in the world that we are preaching about. So you need to embrace AI and start using it in daily life. I use it every day almost. I use it for many, many purposes. So everybody's talking about AI here and there, but what really matters is how you use it as a personal assistant. Start with that. And in 5 to 10 years, we will be talking about the robot at home. Should the child have a robot as a companion? And that is what the technology evolution is right now being accelerated. The technology evolution in AI is enormous. Every 7 months, there is a new model with new capabilities. We are talking about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. We are talking about ASI, which is going to be artificial superhuman intelligence. So this is not going to stop. We need to embrace this technology, do it in a good way, and yeah, that's about it, because it's not going to stop. What AI can be used for is individualized learning, differentiated learning in the classroom, And then the students that are struggling, they can get help with it. And that's where you need to come in and educate those children how to use AI in a proper way. I think I'll end it here, and I'll take some questions for you as well. Thank you again, everyone, and it's great to see you all. And I'm looking forward to see you soon as well.
Thank you, Aslam Sahib. I'd like to, because I think there are a lot of teachers here, right? Yes? Okay, great. So I'm going to try to focus this on teaching and pick up on something that Yasir said. And this is the question we keep hearing, that, you know, in the old days, teacher was like a source of information, and now teacher is a facilitator. So now think about 3 teaching environments. You know, textbooks are only a few hundred years old. So before the textbook, there was a teacher who was standing there giving wisdom and had no textbook. So there was a lot of emphasis on conveying content. Now you have a textbook and a teacher, so you can ask the kid to open up to a textbook particular page, so the content is there separately from the teacher, so the role of the teacher changes. Now imagine that every child has a laptop, right? Role of the teacher changes again. So I want to ask you, how comfortable are you? So this has got to do with practices in teaching, which have nothing to do with AI. But AI will push them forward. So you've got whole class teaching, where one teacher is giving a lecture to the whole class. You've got small group teaching, where you do small groups. Then you've got think, pair, share, where you divide the class into groups of 2. And then finally, you've got individualized teaching, where you say, okay, everybody read or whatever. How comfortable are you in all of these different aspects of teaching? How do you feel facilitation? How strong are you in facilitation? Do we understand what it means? Would love to get the panelists' view as well. So let's see if there's any thoughts, questions from the audience, and then we'll get panelists' reactions as well. Anyone wants to talk about, yes, facilitation, or how teaching is going to change when everyone has a laptop? Are you ready? Do we have a mic? Yeah. Not very well. Shout, or we'll get you a mic.
Assalamu alaikum. I do have a question that it's all about facilitating the students using the AI tools. But one thing is in my mind, that what about the students who use the AI tools in schools and at home? Specifically, some of the students, they do use the AI tools specifically for the written assignments. And as an English teacher, it really makes me hesitant and reluctant to give them RA because they're taking the easy way out to do their assignment instead of thinking on their own. So my question is that how we can encourage them to use the AI tool in a healthy way.
I think you've pointed to a very critical question. It's called cognitive offloading, where the mental work is being done by AI rather than by the student. So the student is just learning how to translate the instruction and give a very simple prompt. Anyone wants to take up the answer to this challenge of cognitive offloading? Should we not use AI, use it? What do we do?
Am I audible? Okay, that's a very good question. And actually, 3 years ago, when generative AI was launched in mass and everyone got access to it through ChatGPT and later on Bard, which turned into Gemini, this is the exact question at the time teachers asked me when I was working closely with teachers. And they were like, students will cheat on assignments. They'll just bring back whatever they're generating, from the task that we're giving them. And I was like, guys, you need to adapt your teaching because students will find the least path to resistance. And they'll always find the easiest way to do the assignment that's been given to them. So as a teacher, you will have to change how learning is taking place within the class. You cannot do the old method of giving out an assignment or giving out a test. Learning needs to take place, but assessment or things of the sort that used to take place without generative AI will need to change. If they don't change, then you are not adapting to that change. And then students will always find a means to cheat. You have to ensure that they are able to learn. And in order to learn, you have to use generative AI as a helpful tool, not as a means for them to cheat. So that's a bigger question. That is a question that you have to solve in consultation with your colleagues. You have to sit down, and it is very contextual as well. It depends upon the resources that are available to you, how generative AI is being used in your particular context. So sit down with your leadership, sit down with your colleagues, think about how you want to change that learning that's taking place in your own context. That's how I'm going to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasser. So I think the onus of the teaching and learning interaction in the classroom becomes very, very critical in this context. Because you don't know what your students will do at home, right? We've talked about the risks. So how you use the time you have with them in the classroom, how you make sure that they're developing critical thinking ability, the interaction that you have as a facilitator, ask them difficult questions, challenge them, ask them to think laterally, push them outside of their comfort zones. Because possibly going forward, that is all that they're going to have to develop those constructive critical thinking abilities. As a professional who's over 40 years old, my dependence on AI has become so strong, right? So think about those sponges of brains that you have in your classrooms. If their brains become lazy, if they get used to easy access to information, they will never feel the need to persist when it comes to understanding something that they don't understand. And that is where you as a teacher comes in. It's a very challenging role for you going forward, but it is a role that you really need to own. That would be my advice.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to ask a very small question, Ji, from Sir Yasser. I agree with Ma'am Iza that it's a big challenge to convert to the Google Classroom. I have a very short question. My students ask me that, Ma'am, in the class, will we have access to YouTube and Instagram? So what do I say to the children for that? Thank you.
So that's an interesting question. And I think depending on the context of how the technology leadership has set up Google Workspace for education in your ecosystem, they can limit access to the whitelisted spaces that the school has allowed them to. Now, we can offer advice to schools in terms of what kind of applications or policies that they can set up, but it has to be an organic thing. Whether students can access Instagram or YouTube within the classroom, I can personally tell you that YouTube content can be restricted within an ecosystem to videos that are whitelisted or suitable for student consumption or children's consumption. So those are tools that are available to the school. As for Instagram and other social media applications, we can definitely restrict those from within the ecosystem. And also, there are many other tools within Google Workspace for Education as an ecosystem that can also allow you to have focused attention in the classroom. If you'd like to learn more, we had set up a booth outside about class tools. We could have told you more about that, but we will be happy to discuss this further as we go along in our deployment. Thank you.
One of the interesting aspects of using AI is that you can ask it lots of questions. And the more questions you ask, or the more refined questions you ask, even if it's why, you'll get a better answer. So I think one of the challenges that teachers have is that they are not really familiar with how they can encourage kids to use AI in an effective way. But I think the more the teachers are asking deeper questions, going back and keep probing and encourage the kids to use AI to go deeper into a question, maybe find something unique. In other words, don't ask them for a standard answer. If you're asking a kid for a standard answer, then you'll get your problem of cognitive overloading. So would you like to, Parvez, make a few remarks on how we can use AI, what's a good way to use AI as a user and then as a teacher?
Yeah, again, as I said, the world is changing, and therefore we need to adapt as well. And some of these, class curriculum courses that we deliver or ask of our students, we really need to ask ourselves, do we still continue to do this as we have been doing, literally 100 years ago? So that's the first part. The second part is that, look, they're going to use AI, as the respected honorable guest said. Students, we were all students at one time. We're looking for the path of least resistance. We want to get things over and done with. It's not necessarily the most enjoyable part of our lives. We just want to get it over and done with. And of course, we will use, as students, AI to deliver that particular course curriculum or target that we have been set by the teacher. One of the things we can do, I believe, is this is where AI can help us, is first of all, allowing us to shorten our time in terms of content creation, the ability to interact, as I mentioned earlier, with the AI teaching assistants that can help us as well. This would allow us, hopefully, to have more free time so that we can ask the student that, okay, put your paper and put your laptop down, explain to me in your own words what exactly you are trying to tell us in that particular course or that program or that written statement. So I think really the human interaction, using AI as, again, a tool to reduce our mundane work, to allow us and facilitate us to free up our time, and then use that time so that we can humanly engage with the student. So that's the recommendation that I would have. And remember, हमारे मेहमान दोस्त कहते हैं माँ की पेट से कोई सीख के नहीं आता. Whatever we learn in this world, we learn from somewhere. And I believe that technology now will allow us through YouTube and Google and various other platforms to learn about AI. And it's incumbent on us as educators for us to first learn, because if I'm not qualified on the subject matter, how can I teach somebody else? So I think that, as teachers, it's incumbent on us that we learn AI. We learn AI in our context of education in teaching. We become better at it, and then we use that as a tool to allow us to teach the next generation of students.
Aslam Saab, somebody had asked a question about Google Classroom. And I think one of the interesting things happening, especially in the context of a school system like Roots, that the kids have more devices and access at home than perhaps in the school. So how do you see this evolving? How should teachers be aware of how much kids have, what kind of access they have at home? So they have to now think a bit more broadly, because they have to think about what they have, what the school has, and what the kids have. So any thoughts on some advice for teachers?
Yeah, the only thing, I've said it before, I said in the last presentation, whenever we invite the children in our classrooms, we power them off. We do not have enough technology in the classrooms. We send them back in time. And that's one of the challenges that we are facing, that we would like to adopt technology, but the tools that that are at our disposal, that we are using, they're slow in coming. We need to move on to one-to-one computing fast as possible. We need to have very strong ecosystems fast as possible. So yes, the only thing I can say is that we need to educate our children to use technology wisely, because it can also go the other way around. And luckily, that more and more people are using technology wisely. First, it's very interesting, but then we start using it as a study tool. We start personal assistant, So that the number of tools that are available for children are increasing. You will see that they have the mobile phones at home. They have their own personal devices. We are opening it up in the classrooms as well. So one-to-one computing and a lot of ecosystem behind it, as Yasir Saab also spoke about, that we have the Google Classroom, we have those tools. I'm very hopeful for a future where AI is playing a positive role in forming the education. Because ed technology without pedagogy is just toys. But ed technology with a purpose is transformative. And at TME, we should elect intelligence over artificiality. So we should deploy AI very wisely, educate ourselves, educate our students as well. So yes, one-to-one computing, fast as possible.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts from the audience?
Yes, this is Aruj here. Actually, it's not a question. I would just like to narrate an incident which happened last year with my son. You know, he was given a homework, and as usual, he was, going about doing his things on his own. And I found him actually, his chat GPT was open on his phone, and he was, taking down the answers from there. So for a moment, I was really furious that why are you using this, and why aren't you taking help from, books? So you see how 14 years old are, they can just outsmart you right away. And he's like, what difference does it make, Mom? That is a resource, and this is also a resource. The only difference is that I'm asking it questions, and it's giving me different answers. And, you spoke about cognitive offloading. It's actually, I won't call it cognitive offloading. I would rather call it cognitive shift. Because you see, we can't really forget the context. For my parents, they had libraries. For me, I had Google, and we were the ones who invented this term, let's Google it. So for them, their context is AI. So how can we, separate AI from this young generation, which we are going to teach? So I think so this is an enabler, and of course, with every tool, there are going to be some pros and cons. So, we would learn as we move along.
I really like the story you gave about interacting with your son. When my son was 14 years old, he was playing a game, a digital game called RuneScape. And in that game, you can trade swords and helmets and all that with each other, right? So you put one in a box, the other one puts in a box, you do a trade. So he said a friend of his had developed a fantastic new trick. And I said, what is that trick? He said that his friend had lots of swords and things, but there was a particular sword that he wanted. And he saw a guy who had that sword. So he said, can we trade? And that guy said, no, this is a very special sword. You have to learn trust. So he said, how do we learn trust? So he said, well, you learn trust by giving me an equipment, but I won't give you anything back. I'll give that same equipment back to you, but I may run off with it. So the guy put it in a box, sent him some small shield. That guy gave it back to him. So he said, can we trade now? He said, no, that was trust level 1. So he said, what do I have to do next? Level 2, he said, give me 5 pieces of equipment, I'll give them back to you. So he gave him 5, he got them back. So now the guy's completely in the zone. So he says, only one more level, trust level 3, give me all your equipment. So he transferred all the equipment, that guy disappeared. So as a result, my son was saying my friend had no equipment left, but he had this trick. And he started doing this trick, and within a week, he had more equipment than he had before. So I said, son, are you going to do it? And he said, yes, it's only RuneScape, which is the name of the game. So I said, but son, it's RuneScape today, and it may be currency trading tomorrow. Does it really make a difference what it is? We should act ethically with people. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have that conversation with him and know that what was going on unless I had been there and talked to him. So, in the world we grew up, Our friends were in front of us. We could chat with them. We could play games. Parents could tell who's the bully, who's the nasty person, who's the good person, who's the hero, and so on. But we are living in an invisible world. So both with our students and our kids, we need to go into their world. So learning about AI is not just about your learning about AI, but to your point, madam, very important to observe and engage with the kids and students to see how they are learning. Anyone wants to add anything to that?
So I think what you've said is very important, right? The brain is a muscle, and it's going to operate the way you train it. And I think that's very key. And to add to what you said, that was such a great example. I see that, right? So I know that people say that, oh, Roblox, lots of issues on Roblox, lots of challenges on Roblox. But again, it's a lot of it has to do with, oh, you know, I have extra Robux. Can I borrow some from you? Or can you give this to me? So children are interacting in a very, very different way now. And what happens then is that your social circumference is not just the friends you physically that are in your physical proximity, but friends from all over the world. What does that mean for our children? Does it give them more exposure? Does it give them more opportunity to engage with other cultures? Or does that make them more introverted? Because you can type and you can communicate online, but when it comes to interpersonal interactions, how do you do that? And the only other thing I'm going to talk about is attention span. You know, we've become so used to getting information, even on ChatGPT, in bite sizes. We don't have the patience to learn to study chapters. And I think being able to focus on something for a long time without getting distracted or without losing attention is a very, very important skill. So I think that's also something that we need to focus on.
Panelists, any last remarks? We've just got a couple of minutes left and then we'll wrap up.
Just to build upon what Mr. Izzah just mentioned, that developing an attention span is a skill. I understand that very much personally, because in the era where we are bombarded with YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, our attention spans are getting shorter because we are getting that rush of excitement from new content constantly. It's just constant new novelty is what's driving the circuitry in our brain to reward us. But as adults, we also understand that anything that we do on a daily basis becomes a habit. And similarly, if we are to consume content, we have to make a focused effort towards consuming content that is more meaningful. Then it also enables us to learn new things. And in my personal capacity, I've noticed that if I'm consuming content, I tend to now also focus on YouTube videos that are a bit longer in length, podcasts that are a bit longer in length but are more substantiative, which are there to inform us. And also, we have to instill, because our habits also get transferred onto children that are part of our lives. So if we have a mix of those things, just like the children, we have to have the empathy to understand what's driving their how they're seeking novelty, and how we seek novelty is no different. See, if we are to, in our context, if we use certain proposals and we copy them, from before, we are doing what they are doing with generative AI. So we have to build that empathy, and we have to change our habits on an individual level to understand the context of students as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you, teachers and colleagues. We are living in a brave new world. There's lots ahead of us, and the more we embrace this new technology, make it part of us, understand how others are using it, the better we'll be as teachers, educators, parents, and colleagues. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our esteemed panelists here. Each one of us has given us much food for thought. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Faisal Mushtaq, Mr. Abbas Hussain, Ma'am Iram, Ma'am Anna Faisal, Ma'am Sebi, may I please request you to join us on the stage and thank our guests by presenting them with special mementos. Mr. Mr. Mahmood, CEO Knowledge Platform, sir. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk session. Mr. Parvez Abbasi, Founder Adventures, Executive Coach and Leadership Development. Ms. Izza Farooq, Senior Specialist, World Bank. Senior Educationist Specialist, World Bank. Mr. Yasir Khan, Project Manager, Google for Education, Tech Valley. And Mr. Aslam Sharif, Chief Technology Officer, the Millennium Education.